guys, it's Landon again. I really appreciate the feedback that we've gotten recently on our YouTube videos across the board on the various content that we've been releasing lately. One of the comments that stuck out to me most, I was talking about some cool investment and speculation books a couple weeks ago, and somebody pointed out that I was only talking about books that were, $1,000, $2,000, $10,000, $20,000, and not necessarily appropriate for all collectors, as not everybody is about to start dropping 4 or 5 figures on comic books, but are still very interested in the speculation market and seeing kind of where comic values are going to go through the next 5, 10, 15 years. And I really appreciated that because it's something that I was talking about that I don't even do, because the books that I usually pick are going to be more in the $50, $100 to $150 range. Something about growing up and working in a comic book store, I actually find kind of the more nuanced, lesser known, under the radar books a little more interesting, as you actually don't see them very often. You might see a lot of Hulk 181s, you might see a lot of X-Men 266s, you might even see a lot of X-Men ones or Daredevil ones if you work in the right vintage shop. But some of these books right here, you may end up seeing a lot less, but they're going to cost you maybe a percentage of the books I just mentioned. So these actually came straight from my my personal pile. I have a very small pile right here inside the vault that the head grader is nice enough to let me use to set books aside that I think are extremely undervalued, and I'm kind of waiting probably at least 3 years, more like 5 to 10 years, to see where these go. And let's go ahead and jump right into them. So here's a cool book. This is the first X-Force and the first Shatterstar. It's New Mutants 100. It's a cover that any 90s comic book collector is going to recognize. And this is actually the 3rd printing of this book. It's the, actually my note's incorrect on the back. This is the 3rd printing because it has silver numbers and a white background, whereas the 2nd printing has gold numbers and a white background. And then the original one is a blue background with white numbers. So if you look at another book that people have gotten excited about recently that are paying an arm and a leg for, that's Hulk 337, where the first printing is the cheapest one in the $100 to $200 range. The 2nd printing is going to be a little bit more, and then the 3rd printing in high enough grade is approaching $1,000 because the books get more scarce as the print runs increase over time. And obviously the color, the image doesn't change, but the color layout does change on that book. So this is the same exact feature in a book that's also a little bit more of a key. It's also the last issue of the series, but for some reason the 2nd and 3rd printings are in fact cheaper. So why is the Hulk 337 flipped with the valuations compared to this one? It's really hard to tell. So there's actually only 203 copies of this book on the census versus the regular New Mutants 100. The first print has 2,961. So shouldn't this one be a lot more expensive? Maybe the market will make that connection in the next few years. At $35, that's a pretty easy, low-risk bet to make. And in any case, you still have a really cool book. I feel the same way about the 2nd prints for Amazing Spider-Man 361 and 362. This is the 1st and 2nd appearance of Carnage. The cover art's by Mark Bagley. The regular covers have a white and a yellow background respectively. These ones, as was popular in the mid-90s, were replaced with a silver background, which is actually more appealing to the eye. And again, this 2nd printing, even though there's way fewer of them on the census than the regular 361, is actually still worth a little bit less. So maybe pick up some of these, wait another 5 years, and see if the market has made the appropriate correction. It is a 2nd printing, but again, it is it is 10 times less common than the original first print of 361. And also has a very cool cover. Same with the 362. It's slightly higher print run than the 2nd print of 361. That being said, It falls into the same exact category. It looks great. It's way cheaper. Both these books are in the $100 to $200 range. Again, a very low risk investment to make. And if the market makes a huge, huge correction where people are going crazy for these all of a sudden because they realize the opportunity with a popular character, a great cover artist, and again, one of the best-selling comic book titles of all time, it's really hard to go wrong. Here's one I still can't explain. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers #1. This is the first appearance of Power Rangers in comic books. It is one of the most successful intellectual properties of all time. It has multiple medias that it's been successful in, that being toys, as well as comic books, and then of course, all of the other lunch boxes and what have you that featured the Power Rangers. They were on trading cards. They were a staple for every kid in the early 90s. And that collecting window is right over this book right now. But for some reason, you can still pick this book up. This is a 9/8 white pages for $120. It was not a huge print run compared to the Marvel and DC comics coming out at the time. To me, this is a no-brainer. I would pick up as many of these as possible. Maybe eventually they'll make a really, really good and successful Power Rangers movie, and people will all of a sudden be flooding to this book, just like whether it's like Sonic, Transformers, G.I. Joe, etc. This one has yet to see its best day. I guarantee it. Star Slayer #2, 9/8 white pages. This one is very near and dear to me. This is the first appearance of the Rocketeer. He's featured on the back of this as well. And then he has a second cameo appearance in Star Slayer #3. So a first and second appearance. You can pick this book up in 9/8 for as little as $200. And certainly any grade under that, it drops off significantly. They'd made an awesome Rocketeer movie in the early 90s. They haven't made one since. I would say it's just around the corner as far as potential remakes for Hollywood, since that seems to be the flavor of the week for this entire decade. So whether it's the next 3, 5, or 10 years, again, a couple $100, it's a pretty easy bet to make. And again, it's going to retain its value, probably no matter what, at worst. Or, you could easily see a huge multiplier, 5, 10, 15 times moving forward. But Star Slayer #2 is another book on my personal list. And then last but not least, this is more of a bet with Wes and I. This is the second printing of Transformers #1, which is much harder to come by than the first printing. That being said, the cover is not different. There's no feature on the cover that's different than the first printing. I prefer second and third prints to have something different, at least a color, ideally a completely different cover concept layout. For other printings, I think that helps ensure future value. That being said, this one is already more expensive than the first printing because it is so much more hard to come by. I think that characteristic should be applied to these books, these other books I talked about as well, even though it hasn't yet. But for some reason it has to this one, even without the different cover. But again, Transformers, one of the biggest intellectual properties of all time. It's only a matter of time before they either restart the franchise or come out with more sequels and prequels and everything in between. I'm sure Michael Bay has a few more ideas. But Transformers #1 is another book that fits that general category for the type that I pick out on a regular basis to hold on to for, again, 3, 5, 10 years. Another great example is a book I don't have in front of me, is the Masters of the Universe #1 Gold Foil Edition. It came out in October of 2002, and it has a 4, 5, 6 page preview of Invincible, which is easily Invincible's first real appearance in comics. He has, there's a whole bunch of pages of story with dialogue. And then Invincible 1 didn't actually come out until January of the following year in 2003. So it predates it by 3 or 4 months. And Invincible 1 in 9/8 is $2,000, whereas Masters of the Universe 1 Gold Foil Edition in 9/8 is $75. With all the attention on Invincible right now with the show, or the cartoon, it's hard to imagine that people didn't jump to this already. but they haven't. It's still extremely cheap. You can probably find it in dollar bins if you go to the right stores. And of course, you can find it online for anywhere, even in high grade, $50 to $100. Again, very low risk bet. I highly recommend that one. Invincible was one of my favorite comic books growing up in the store. One of the first independents I got into, and it's really just a great read through and through. I hope the show is good as well. But if you're into that sort of comic book speculation, that's a book that has another just huge array of things going for it at a very low risk. So big opportunity there. Those are the books that I recommend. This is probably represents the last 6 months of me seeing things come through the store. You all know what we've seen, but this is the stuff that I've been picking out to hold on to. So thanks for tuning in. I appreciate any feedback in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, and then you'll know about more content that comes up as we put it out. And hopefully we'll see you on the live sales on Wednesdays and Fridays. So take care.